Coming back to the U.S. in Houston, Texas, the fate of the famed Astrodome is on the line on Tuesday's elections. Voters are being asked whether to raise $217 million to save the stadium. If the vote fails, the first dome stadium in the world could be razed in a few months. David Bush is with Preservation Houston and joins us via Skype. David, thank you so much for taking some time with us on Arise America.
Thank you for having me.
You know, the Astrodome opened, well, I don't even know if I want to admit it, but it opened the year that I was born. But even I remember as a child just what a wonder it was. Talk about the marvel of the Astrodome, not only architecturally, but culturally, and what molds and new ground it broke when it was built.
Well, it really put Houston on the map. It's the building that put Houston, Texas on the map. If people didn't know where Houston was, they still knew the Astrodome. And what we hear people talking about, and what I remember most, is when you walked into that stadium, just this huge space. It was the largest room in the world, 700 feet across, 200 feet tall, seated 50,000 people. And you didn't really get that sense from the outside because it was partially buried. It was 30 feet into the ground. So you'd walk in and there would suddenly just open up this huge space with colorful seats. It was really a theater for sports. It had colorful seats. It had a huge 400-foot scoreboard that set off fireworks when the home team scored. It was really just an amazing building and set the standard for stadiums that followed.
You know, you make a very good point there, because dome stadiums are no big deal now. As a matter of fact, many people sort of expect to be under a dome when they go to these big sporting events. But a lot of history, if you will, was made in that dome. A lot of cool events and activities happened in the Astrodome. Let's talk about some of them. Well, let's see. Let's start with its name. Of course, right there in Houston, there was NASA and the direct correlation with the astronauts there.
Right, and the astronauts were introduced at the Astrodome. But there always had to be sort of showmanship. That's one thing that people really fondly remember, is the showmanship that went into the Astrodome. So even for serious events where they introduced the astronauts, or where the lunar astronauts came back and were presented their medals, there was always showmanship. There were rodeo performers along with the astronauts. Frank Sinatra was the MC when the astronauts received their medals. So even then, there had to be a fun spirit involved in it.
And a whole new technology had to be developed, because it was a dome, which meant that no rain or sunlight was going to get to the turf. So then came AstroTurf.
AstroTurf, and part of that, beyond the need for sunlight and watering it, was that the stadium changed shapes basically for football and baseball. And so one of the Astrodome's claims to fame was that it had the world's longest zipper to open up the AstroTurf.
Talk a little bit about the local conversation about whether or not this structure should be preserved. What is the public sentiment there?
It's the first surveys that came out, the polls that came out, showed that about 45% of the public was in favor of renovating the dome, 35% was opposed, and 20% was undecided. And that's where we were going into this election today. A lot of people have fond memories of the dome and really hope that there is a new use for it. It's a matter of repurposing a building that is really very solid. It was partially built to be a bomb shelter, so it's not going to come down easily. So the question is, does it make more sense to spend $200 million to renovate the dome, or $60 to $100 million to demolish it?
I've heard one critic say that refurbishing it is throwing good money after bad. You say it's solid. It's sound structurally. So, you know, what would be the intuition for that this would be good money after bad?
It's hard to say. We haven't really heard anything very specific. A lot of it is just about spending money on the stadium. But the Convention and Visitors Bureau, the people who run the convention centers here, have all said that it would be a huge economic benefit to the city, that it would allow us to host the largest national and international events that we can't host right now.
Speaking of international and national events, let's talk just a little bit more about some of the more important events that happened there at the Astrodome. We talked about the astronauts, of course, the space program there, but Billie Jean King played there. Talk about some of those important, iconic events there at the Astrodome.
The Battle of the Sexes, Billie Jean King and Bobby Riggs, probably not the most politically correct event now. Billie Jean King was carried out on a litter by muscle men dressed as Egyptian slaves, and Bobby Riggs was pulled out in a rickshaw pulled by scantily clad models. So she gave him a pig, he gave her a lollipop. Not probably an event that wouldn't be held today, but attracted a huge amount of attention in the 70s. It was part of that showmanship. We had Evel Knievel here jumping cars. We had
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali, not one of his better fights. Ernie Terrell, not a big fight in '67, but he did fight here. Mickey Mantle hit a home run here. He hit the first home run in the Dome. The Rolling Stones performed here. Elvis Presley performed here. On a more serious note, George H.W. Bush was nominated for president at the Republican convention here. So a wide range of activities over the years.
Yeah, put on your future spectacles, or maybe you've been hearing reporting on exit polls. Speculate, what do you think? Will this be passed?
I hate to say, I think it's going to be very close. I don't know why, I just have a gut feeling that it's going to be very close. But from what we've seen, people are responding very well to the idea of finding a new use for the building.
I must say, it's hard to imagine Houston without the Astrodome. David Bush, thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you're watching Arise America.